Natural Law, Class 4.
Now, the approach that this Father Raymond Smith is taking regarding natural law is complementary to what we get in the philosophy manuals, such as we find in Man is Man by Higgins, and The Moral Man, I think it's called, by Biddle, and Ethics. Those are both ethics texts. And The Science of Ethics by Cronin, which is probably the most complete. And of course, all three of these are out of print due to the trashing of the systematic philosophical textbooks that took place with the rise of the Second Vatican Council and the triumph of the New Theology, because the New Theology does not present things in a systematic manner. It presents things in forms of essays, speeches,
opinions.
Yes, and what happens is there's entire generations of priests who have been formed without a systematic presentation of doctrine and a systematic scholastic presentation of morals, and of course a systematic scholastic presentation of philosophy. So what happens is they end up to be fragmented and their formation is incomplete, and as Catholic priests even, they are often a small part of a man pretending to be the whole. They don't have the whole formation. So there is a small group of Thomists who are standing up to all this, and they're not necessarily SSPX/traditionalist Catholics. The one who comes to mind the most is, of course, Dr. Edward Fazer and his friends, who he's is on various speaking podium with. There was an older philosopher there. I can't remember his name, but he gave a lecture about the New Theology versus scholastic philosophy and theology, and the way that the New Theology has eclipsed it. And it's interesting too, because even this man has a certain sympathy for Father Henri de Lubac, who is one of the pioneers of the New Theology, in the sense that de Lubac had some good things to say. Okay, they wouldn't be popular if they didn't have some good things to say. But anyway, so we don't have these systematic presentations anymore, except in the traditional seminaries. And Father Raymond Smith is basing his on what the manuals teach, but he's developing it according to a very reasonable line, and I think it's a series of arguments that he has developed himself. And that is, if we want to look at natural law, we have to first look at what is natural to man. And we have to start with the most basic things that anyone can recognize. We have to start with the most basic components, or characteristics, I should say, the most basic characteristics that everyone or any sane person will agree upon. And they don't necessarily come from the Bible, and they don't necessarily come from the Church's magisterium. They come from just looking at man and seeing what is natural to him. Because that is the great error of modern thinking, that nothing is natural to us. Everything is taught, everything is learned. So we talked about the 3 points that is natural to man. That man doesn't have to be taught about this. He does it automatically. First, self-preservation. Okay, he wants to eat. He needs to sleep. If he's sick, he needs to get better. If somebody throws an ashtray at him, he instinctively ducks.
Or blocks.
Or blocks it. Or grabs it and heaves it back at the assailant. So self-preservation. Then there was also the preservation of the species, the kind, reproduction. Now we know that we see both of these things in plants and animals. Of course, a plant has no senses, so somebody can just come and mow a plant down. But if you try and mow a dog down, the dog is going to run out of the way. Okay, so even the dog has the self-preservation instinct characteristic.
That's why they hide with the vacuum cleaner.
They hide when the vacuum cleaner. Yeah, they have their they have their head under the couch while the rest of their big German Shepherd body is sticking out, and they're very well hidden. But so that's natural to man. self-preservation, and wanting to reproduce. In fact, the business of reproduction is, as Father Raymond said, the problem is not proving this, the problem is controlling it, because that is the aspect that gets out of control. And well, I'll talk about that just a little bit more later. And of course, what is unique to man that you don't find in the animals is point number 3, and that is we want to know. We want to. We say why. We say what is this. We say where are you going. We say what did you do in the war, Daddy. We say all these things because we want to know. Now, any person who's sane would have to agree that these are natural to man and that it does not have to be taught. Every one of these things, because we are fallen human nature, can be perverted, can be twisted, can be turned away from its ultimate goal. A person might commit suicide or purposely make himself sick for whatever reason, if he himself is a sicko. A couple that gets married and says we're not having children. Okay, that is a perversion of the preservation of the species and also invalidates the marriage. There is no marriage. And third, want to know, well, as Father Smith says, sometimes self-preservation, that is lust for food, and then preservation of the species, or the acts regarding preservation of the species, lust for that, can take over in a man so much that he really is not interested in learning anything of any depth. He's just interested in learning how to get more of these two things.
But it's still the want of that knowledge.
Yes, yeah, but it is. He's not growing in knowledge. It's like that when Mortimer, when that I can't remember his name, the PBS host, the PBS interviewer said to Mortimer Adler, "Suppose I don't want to know anything more." Then Mortimer Adler says, "Then you're deficient, because your mind, your intellect wants to know things, craves knowledge the way your body craves food." All right. So anyway, that is those 3 points. Now, what we're going to talk about today, providing we have time, is moving on to, because we're still moving on to, remember what we started with. We started with him saying it is against natural law. Birth control is against natural law. Remember how many times we dinged Pius XI regarding natural law. He used the word natural. In one paragraph, he used nature and natural. He used those words, I think, at least 6 times. Okay, so he is moving towards particular actions that are against the natural law, but he's starting from the most broad understanding and the most broad application and the most broad examples. And these 3 is where we start. But if you remember, he was talking about, what were the 3 points? Number 1, this is against natural law. Number 2, that's against natural law. Number 3, that's against natural law.
Birth control.
Birth control.
Euthanasia.
Euthanasia. Hint, Flannery O'Connor. Racism. Okay. And he wrote this was published in 1960, so racism was very much on everybody's minds. I don't know that somebody writing now would be dealing with that. They would be dealing with other issues that are big right now. But anyway, that was the big topic, as we know from the Flannery O'Connor stories. So, the next 3 points he's going to make then, in moving towards showing how what is natural to man is not only these 3 characteristics, but it's going to refine itself into these particular acts. The next 3 things we're going to look at in that move from the general to the particular is we're going to look at the word inclination. We're going to talk a little bit about pleasure. From there, we move to happiness. And the 4th is law, which we will only have a couple little hors d'oeuvres to prepare us for the next class. We're going to move into law. So, inclination. Now, we said that the man has the inclination to preserve himself, to reproduce, the inclination to knowledge. So he stops and looks at the word inclination. And he says, quite simply, a natural inclination is that which is in keeping with the nature of the thing that has it. Can you dig it? All right, I'll say it again. He says, and he even prefaces it. Although it might seem redundant, he gives the definition: a natural inclination is that which is in keeping with the nature of the thing that has it. Another way of saying it is in his next sentence: an inclination flows from the very nature of the thing. And the example he gives is something from inanimate, something that's not living. Fire. Fire has the inclination to what?
Burn.
To burn. It feeds itself on what it burns. And it only burns certain things. It won't burn a rock. Natural fire won't burn a rock, yes.
I think if you throw a wet rock in fire, it'll explode.
Maybe. But the inclination of fire is to burn. It'll burn most objects. It won't burn water. It won't burn a rock. So fire, though, does not have consciousness, so it is not aware of this inclination. It just has it. Dr. Waters, and I think even Dr. Bennett, would use for inclination, they would actually use the term appetite, the philosophical use of the word appetite. Fire has an appetite to burn wood, to burn trees, to burn grass. And God forbid, if the fire gets hot enough and there's an animal trapped in that fire, it will burn the animal. It will consume it. Okay? So, fire burns. That's the natural inclination. He moves then to living things, which is, the example he gives is a rose. Okay? Now, the rose has what? No one has to teach the rose to do this. No man has to program the rose to do this. The rose does this according to its nature. It is its inclination to seek nourishment from where? Two places.
The ground and the air.
Close. The ground, primarily moisture, that's coming from the bottom, and the sun.
The sun.
And that is why you will see various plants, they will bend according to the sun. They have that appetite to be fed by the sun. They have that inclination. Again, we don't have to talk to the seed and say, okay, now we're going to put you in the ground, and what you need to do, if you want to live, if you have to have a little root that goes down into the earth and seek water, and you have petals that go and leaves that turn up to the sun to receive the nourishment the sun gives you. And if you don't do that, you die.
Jay, you kind of rolled your R's.
What's that?
You kind of rolled your R's.
How about that? But anyway,
It's never going to happen again.
this is why we're insisting. This is part of the thing's nature. I just want to make sure we're running here. I don't know if I like this new system. Okay, yeah, we're all right. Part of the thing's nature. All right? The natural inclination. The natural inclination. In the animal kingdom, it's the same thing. We don't need to give a whole truckload of examples. The animal has these inclinations that nobody has to teach it. No one has to teach a spider that in order to survive, he has to build a web, or teach the bee that the way it has to behave. And of course, the example that Father Smith gives is the bird. There is the natural inclination of the bird to fly, but also in day-to-day life of the bird to build a nest. And it doesn't know what it's doing. It goes out, grabs this branch, takes it back. We had them on our porch. You saw them going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, building the nest. And they do it pretty quickly too. They
They don't have to decide on what products to use.
they don't have to go to Home Depot. They don't have to wait for the Home Depot sale to show up to see that lumber's on sale and paneling's on sale. But another thing about natural inclination is what? Animals have natural friends and animals have natural enemies. The bird and the deer just coexist. They get along with one another. A bird can be on the ground. The deer will look at it while it's champing its food. Or a cow. A cow doesn't go after a bird, but a cat will go after a bird. Dogs go after birds, usually just to play, just for something to chase. But a cat will go after a bird in order to kill it. So nature has these inclinations where they do things by nature, and also there are natural enemies. Okay, all this is built in. And in saner times, man would say it is the product of intelligence that put those inclinations there for a purpose. Many modern scientific materialists do handstands, and they will actually admit behind closed doors, give the most ridiculous and implausible explanations in public to try and disprove, try to deny the obvious, and say that this is just a chance of blind evolution. Okay. They even come up with this crazy theory called the multiverse. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
No, what is this one?
The multiverse theory is, for a long time, of course, we've been saying, well, the universe is, I haven't done this study in detail, but I know others have. The universe is perfectly balanced, especially the Earth is perfectly balanced. All the conditions that make life possible. And if one thing was out of order in this overall balance, for example, the ozone, okay, if one thing was out of balance, then life could not exist. So the fact that all these things are in perfect order means, yes?
Finish what you're saying.
All these, well, let me finish completely. All these things that are in perfect order and work together so well and so intricately means that there must have been a higher intelligence who made all of this according to a design and for a purpose. Okay? So, in order to counteract that, and for no other real reason, for many of them, I can't speak for all of them, but for many of them, then they want to deny that one Lewontin biologist who says we cannot allow a divine foot in the door. We cannot allow the divine foot in the door. Okay. They come up with an idea of the multiverse. And the multiverse idea is, of course, we're here because we're here, we know we're here, but we really don't know where we stand in the vast scheme of things. For all we know, the galaxies and the planets and the stars have been here for billions and billions and billions and billions of years. And in that time, it is most likely that there could have been millions of various universes that have spawned over this vast period of time. So there's multiple universes, multiverses, millions of these multiple universes. I think I've got this theory right. And so the odds are that by sheer chance, there will be one planet where everything clicks together right. When you start with us, and you look out and you say, well, it has to be the product of a design. But the multiverse theory says there are millions of universes, and there are millions of planets, and it is just the odds are that we are the planet where all the conditions came together on their own to make this work the way it does. What's the first objection to that, of course? Okay, remember Dr. Waters, in science, evidence alone matters.
Yeah, there is no evidence.
There's no real evidence. It is a theory, and it's really a theory to try and keep that divine foot from entering the door. So, with man, of course, we have the inclination. We have all these characteristics. We have all these, I'm trying to remember the word that Dr. Waters used, and I can't. But do you remember being in class with Dr. Waters saying, man is a talky animal. He's a laughy animal. He's a political animal. He is a musical animal. He is all these things. Why is he laughy animal? Because he's rational. Why is he a political animal? Because he's rational. Why is he a musical animal? Because he's rational. Everything comes back to the fact that he is rational. The fact that we can laugh means that we can see things that are out of order, incongruous, and they make us laugh. Babies laugh. You can make a little baby laugh, and it's you see people holding the baby going goo 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 goo, and of course babies, of course, especially little children, love repetition, and you can just keep doing the same thing for an hour to very small children, and they'll just laugh every time. But they laugh. You never see a kitten laugh. You never see a puppy laugh. Even at that tiny age, they understand that something is incongruous, something is funny. Okay, so this is natural to man. Okay, these inclinations, we don't have to teach the baby to laugh. So, he says, at any rate, from the very nature of man there flows this capacity to perceive the incongruous and laugh, as well as to be conscious of the painful and cry. More basic is man's ability to reason. We go back to Dr. Waters. He's a laughy animal because he's rational. So much so is this according to his nature that when man lacks a sufficient degree of intelligence, he is judged to be defective, abnormal. Okay, now, so I want to read this one section here to close out this thing about inclination. Another way of putting this idea of natural desire or inclination is to say that it means or implies whatever is agreeable to one's nature. Okay, whatever is the inclination is what is agreeable to one's nature. It's agreeable to the fire to burn the wood. It's agreeable for the bird to build the nest. It's agreeable for the man to laugh and to seek to know things. To remain in existence is clearly in agreement with one's nature. So we're back to here, self-preservation. To preserve one's species is agreeable to the individual and to the species. We're at point number 2, the preservation of the species. We even have a sacrament for the preservation of the species, marriage. And number 3, to seek knowledge is agreeable to man because through knowledge he employs a power which affords him great pleasure. Okay, so that's the inclination. He closes this section by saying that it affords him great pleasure. So the fact that, and again, he's going to be talking about these three basic points. The fact that they all give pleasure. The goodness of the food is not the end of the act, it is an inducement to the act. Drinking, sleeping give us pleasure because we know the displeasure we feel when we're hungry, and we know the displeasure we feel when we need sleep or haven't had enough sleep. And we see, too, that usually not having any appetite for food is an indication of a disorder. When someone is very sick, they have no appetite. I love cheeseburgers, but when I had my stomach flu, I didn't even want to think about a cheeseburger. Pregnant women have all types of funny stories. Well, they're funny afterwards. Of the things that they just cannot abide.
Or weird things that they need.
Yeah,
like
I mean,
pineapple yogurt at 5 o'clock in the morning.
You know, I mean, I think it was Mommy who couldn't. It might have been Mommy who couldn't stand the smell of cooking meat when she was expecting you.
I know somebody who couldn't stand the smell of salad.
Smell of salad, the smell of coffee. A friend of ours who runs the store up on Colvin, her husband was cooking something and she walked in and she was pregnant and she ran around and opened up every window. You know, but see, the thing is that is a disorder. Why? Because we need to eat in order to survive, and if we lose our appetite and food doesn't give us any pleasure, not only that, but it is something that causes revulsion, then what's going to happen? The self-preservation is going to wind down and stop. Okay, we're going to die. So there is pleasure connected with food, pleasure connected with sleep. Okay, preservation of the species and everything involved with it. I'm certainly not going to go into detail. There is pleasure connected with that. And as Father Smith said, we don't have to prove that. If anything, the big problem is controlling it, keeping it under control, keeping it within the veil of marriage alone. And that's what modern society denies on a grand scale. People living together, cohabitating, all types of other things. And what did Our Lady of Fatima say? More souls go to hell for the sins of the flesh than any other reason. She said that as the beginning of a warning at the beginning of the 20th century, more souls go to hell for the sins of the flesh for any other reason. They're attracted to the sins of the flesh because of the pleasure it gives. Okay, it's out of order. They've got it out of order. And of course, wanting to know, that gives pleasure as well. When you're trying to figure out, even when it's something as stupid as, what's the name of the man who played C-3PO in Star Wars? I can't, and then we go rushing to our computers and the internet to find out what was the name of the actor, and that gives us a certain pleasure, to learn something, to come to knowledge of something that we were wondering about, because God by giving us intelligence, He put in us, by our nature, the capacity to wonder. Why do the stars look different every night? Why is the moon in a different place every night? Why does sometimes the moon looks like it's full, and there's only half of it, and there's only a crescent left? Why does water never flow uphill? All these things. Why? And we puzzle about it, and then when we discover or learn the truth, there is a certain rest in the acquisition of that knowledge. The mind rests. Now I know. And that rest is pleasure. Okay, that is the intellectual pleasure. On a high plateau of intelligence, man still finds pleasure and intellectual thrill, as it were. Man's mind is in a state of wonder when faced with something new and strange. Man's mind is at rest when the answer to his wonder is provided. He feels good to know the truth. Knowing the right answers provides pleasure for man. It is also agreeable to his nature. And we're talking strictly on the philosophical level. We're not talking about the other necessary truth, that it's very useful to know the truth. If you're traveling from here to Florida, it's very useful to know the truth of how to get there, so you don't end up in Nova Scotia, or you don't end up in Dallas, Texas. Without a map, that's where we could end up. So, but we're talking on the much more basic level, the fact that it gives pleasure to know. So man is in a unique position regarding these three things, okay? He can know the three basic drives within him. Man can know the world outside of him. Man can compare the urges within him, and he can ask questions about the meaning of all this. Man would not be real man if he did not begin to wonder what life was all about. The life which he is both trying to preserve within himself, that life which he is both trying to preserve within himself and to multiply by union with another human being. See, he's always back to here, these things. Man is coming face to face with the natural law. Okay? So, we've covered these three basic things: the inclination, pleasure, and the happiness. Now we're just going to get the hors d'oeuvre, the first points dealing with law. And actually, I really didn't deal with happiness, because why does man do anything? What is his ultimate goal?
Happiness.
His ultimate purpose is he wants to be happy. He wants happiness. Nobody wants to be unhappy.
Nobody has a free will to be unhappy either.
No, you don't have the free will to be unhappy. That's built in. Man often will seek happiness in the wrong places. He will seek happiness in drugs. He will seek happiness in drunkenness. He will seek happiness in gambling. All these things that are disorders, but he doesn't do it he doesn't do drugs to purposely destroy himself. He does drugs because of the quote-unquote happiness, momentary happiness he gives him. And of course, if it's hard drugs, then he becomes addicted, and then we move into another set of problems. But the main point is that man does this for happiness, and he is in, dare I use the word from our Declaration of Independence, he is always in the pursuit of happiness, in general. Even if he's going after things that are objectively wrong, he's doing it to be happy. The couple who cohabitate are doing it to be happy. We love each other. But they are, of course, forcefully transgressing the 6th and 9th commandment in doing so. They're seeking happiness in the wrong places. So, which brings us to the next point, which is, as we move into law, is that for legitimate goods, for legitimate actions, to carry out our legitimate inclinations, we have a natural right to do so. Okay? You have the right to do those things for your own self-preservation within the limits of, within rational limits. The within rational limits is where we're moving into law. But within rational limits, you have the right to self-preservation. You have the right to preserve the species within the context and the veil of marriage that God gave us, and you have the right to pursue knowledge. Does that mean I can cheat on my test from the guy next door? No, that is an unlawful use of knowledge. But that's why I said the just and rational pursuit of these things is something for which you have the right. And because you have the right to these things, does that mean if you have the right to them, does that mean that nobody else has the right? No, it means that everyone has the right. We're only right now talking about these three basic things: self-preservation, preservation of the species, and the desire to know. If you have the right to these things, then everybody has the right to these things, which means that no one has the right to unlawfully prevent you from living, prevent you from getting married and having children, prevent you from seeking true and good knowledge. Okay, and because man lives in society, then man has to work out a system, a rule of law, a code of living in which everyone's rights on these points and others will be preserved and protected, and that no one can just come along and trample on someone else pursuing these true and just inclinations. Okay, and that's where we're going to be moving into law, because man has to live together. And you'll talk to someone, you'll say, what's the purpose of law? Like, who is the man who made Gone with the Wind? Selznick. Now, Selznick had what I'll call a pagan Jewish father. He was, because a true Jew wouldn't talk like this. But this pagan Jewish father said, you have the right to get anything you want from anyone else, and if anyone stands in your way, you crush them. That is what Selznick was brought up with, that type of thinking. You have the right to anything you want, and if anyone stands in your way, you crush them. Okay. Well, if Selznick admits to that as being a law for himself, what does he have to admit?
That it's a law for everyone else.
It can be a law for everyone else, which means there is nothing protecting him either from some stronger beast crushing him for no just reason, for an improper reason. When we read Saul Alinsky, who says there is no such thing as an objective rule of ethic, the end justifies the means, so if you have to lie to get your way, you lie. You have to steal to get your way, you steal. He doesn't really say it in the way of steal, but mainly lying. Okay, you just lie if you have to. Well, then he can't get upset if somebody lies to him, because he's denied the objective rule of law that says thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. It comes from God. It also comes from nature. As we said, even the Indians, the American Indians, when they were pagan, they knew that lying was something dishonorable. Okay, so law is there. So my point is that someone like Alinsky cannot be upset if somebody uses the end justifies the means to crush him, because he's denied that rule of law. This is a perverse law, and it's not a true law. So what we will look into then, law in general, That's what's coming up next. Law in general, by which the common good is preserved and the good of the individual and the good of overall society is maintained. And all this, of course, we will be looking at within terms of the nature of things, even before we get to the Ten Commandments. So, that's all for today.
Sound production, Oltyn Library Services, all rights reserved. This recording may not be reproduced without explicit permission of Oltyn Library Services, www.oltyn.org.